All right, our next article for the Week 7 magazine is the In the News article titled Star Wars. That starts on page 4. And the subheading is, or the subtitle is, Should the United States be getting ready for future battles in outer space? By Todd Olson. Before we get into the main article, we're going to look down here at our vocabulary. So a satellite is a machine sent into space that moves around the Earth, the Moon, or the Sun. A missile is an object that is thrown, shot, or launched as a weapon. Assets are valuable things. Orbit is travel around something in a curved path. And data is information that is often used to calculate or plan something. I'm going to zoom over here. This part of the article. I'm going to turn this light off. There we go. A satellite circles Earth 20,000 miles high. Far below, a missile leaves the ground and rockets into space. Nearly an hour later, the missile blasts the satellite into tiny pieces. Before long, another satellite explodes, then dozens more. A war has started high in the sky, and the effects are felt on Earth immediately. This may sound like science fiction, but experts say it might soon be real. Wars of the future may be fought in space. How can we be ready for these wars? In June, President Donald Trump announced a plan. He wants to form a special military division to defend America in outer space. Soon, the U.S. may have an Army, a Navy, an Air Force, the Marines, the Coast Guard, and a Space Force. Pause and think. Why might the United States need a Space Force? Special soldiers. The Space Force might sound like an army from a Star Wars movie, but these soldiers won't be patrolling the skies with laser guns and lightsabers. They'll be in central rooms or control rooms staring at computer screens. Their job will be to guard one of the most important assets we have, satellites. Now, over here in the caption, we have the Space Force. Someday there might be a special military division to defend America in outer space. So next we're going to turn the page to page 6. Walk outside at night and stare up at the sky. It may look empty except for the stars. In fact, it's full of satellites. These machines take pictures and send other information back to Earth. The smallest could fit in the palm of your hand. The largest, called the International Space Station, is the size of a football field. More than 1,800 working satellites orbit Earth. Every day you depend on satellites. Open Google Maps on your phone to find a friend's house? You've just used the GPS, Global Positioning System. It's powered by data from dozens of satellites. Check to see if your soccer game might be rained out. The weather report from information and pictures gathered by satellites. Or the weather report came from information and pictures gathered by satellites. So pause and think. What are satellites? What do they send back to the Earth? Spies in the sky. Information from the sky is even more important to the U.S. military. Spy satellites take pictures from thousands of miles high. They track the movement of enemy troops on the ground. They watch for tests of nuclear bombs. If the U.S. is attacked, satellites could be the first target. In January 2007, China proved that it could be done. The Chinese military fired a missile at a weather satellite. The missile hit its target nearly 600 miles above Earth. The strike wasn't an act of war. The satellite belonged to China, but the mission sent a message, and the U.S. military listened. Since then, the Air Force has been working secretly on how to protect America in space. Pause and think. How does the U.S. military use satellites? Keeping the peace. One thing is certain, a space war could be very dangerous. When an object explodes in space, it breaks into thousands of pieces. Those pieces don't just drift away, they stay in orbit. They turn into floating weapons that can destroy spaceships or other satellites. Since the early years of space exploration, the world's most powerful countries have tried to keep peace in the skies. In 1967, the US and several other nations signed the Outer Space Treaty. They promised to use the moon and planets only for peaceful purposes. So far, the treaty has helped prevent war from spreading into space. That makes some experts question if creating a space force is really a good idea. They wonder, will it help keep our skies safe or send the message that we're ready to attack? Pause and think. What did countries agree to in the Outer Space Treaty? I'm going to look down here at the timeline. The space age. Believe it or not, humans have only been exploring space for about 60 years. Here are some important moments from the very beginning. 1957. A group of countries that used to be called the Soviet Union launches a satellite. It's called Sputnik and is the first human-made object in space. 1961. Yuri Gagarin of the Soviet Union is the first person to orbit the Earth. America wants to show it is just as powerful and vows to put a man on the moon. 1967. The US and several other nations signed the Outer Space Treaty. They promised to use the moon and planets only for peaceful purposes. 1969. US astronaut Neil Armstrong becomes the first person to walk on the moon. Americans will always remember his famous words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." We're going to move over here to the questions. I do want you to use full sentences for these questions, so please remember that. Number 1, where might wars of the future be fought? That one should be pretty obvious with the whole theme of the story. But if you're not sure, take a look back at that first section. Number 2, who announced a plan for the Space Force in June? Now, of course, remember this was June of 2018, not June of 2020, as June of 2020 has not happened yet. That is also found on page 5. This is number 3, how do satellites help you in your daily life? That was described up here in this section on page 6. Number 4, what did China do in January 2007? That's found up here on page 6 as well in the Spies in the Sky section. And then number 5, why would a war in space be dangerous? If you look up here at the top part of page 7, you'll find some information about that. Again, if you need help during these questions, you might want to kind of backtrack a little bit and pause in between while you look for your answers and write them down. And as always, if you need anything, please let me know. Thank you.